so we're going to start naming ionic compounds, and if we're going to name ionic compounds, we have to name the cation and we have to name the anion. Polyatomic ions, you're just going to have to remember the name. So if you look on the chart, or any chart, or you make a chart of polyatomic ions, that's the name. You see that polyatomic ion, that's what you write. For naming monatomic ions, so first we're going to look at cations, and the cations are usually going to be metals. So ask yourself this question. Do they form more than one charge? I recommend writing that down. That's a question you need to answer if you're going to name some of these compounds, all the compounds, correctly. So if the answer is no, your job is a lot easier. So if it's no, and for no, or for elements in group 1, for elements in group 2, the answer is no. They only form one type of cation. On your periodic table, you have a +1 over group 1, column 1, and you have a +2 over group 2. So they always form the same charge. So that's not a problem. Right. Sodium is in group 1, and so sodium is going to be Na+ if it's an ion. Calcium is in group 2, so it's going to be Ca2+ if it's an ion. Silver is always going to be plus. So there's another 6 that I'd like you to remember. So you need to get your periodic table and find on the periodic table aluminum, gallium, and indium in group 13. See, they're stacked nicely on top of each other. And zinc and cadmium right next to them, and then silver. And these 6 elements are only going to form one charge each. In this column, it's a +3. Right? Aluminum, gallium, and indium are always going to be +3. So we're going to name them a certain way. Zinc and cadmium are always +2. So we're going to name them a certain way. And then silver is always +1. Nice thing about this, it's on the periodic table, the triangle's right there, and there's one element in this group, and it's +1. There's 2 elements in this group, and they're +2. And 3 elements here, and they're +3. So maybe that helps you remember it. All right, so what do? Well, it's this. If you have one of these cations that does not form more than one charge, you just write the name of the metal. So, Na+ is sodium. That's it. Calcium 2+. Calcium, and then silver, even though it's a transition metal, and many transition metals we're going to name another way. Silver is part of this triangle, and so it's always +1. So we just write silver. Okay, so that's how you name cations that only form one charge. Just write the name. But what if the answer is yes? So the question is, do they form more than one charge? If the answer is yes, then you're going to do something slightly different. It's not very much. If they form more than one charge, you have to tell the reader what that charge is. So what you do, you write the name of the metal, and you include the charge of the metal in parentheses in Roman numerals. So for example, this is copper 1 and this is copper 2, copper 1+, copper 2+, and copper forms both of these charges. So if I just wrote copper, someone wouldn't know if I was talking about copper 1 or copper 2. So it's copper and in parentheses a 1. Copper and then in parentheses a 2. So when you're naming ionic compounds, the cation is going to be named first. It's written on the left. So we would start with a cation. And then we get to the right side, which the right side might be a polyatomic ion, right? The right side of some chemical. For example, sodium chloride. Right? Sodium chloride is an ionic compound. On the left side, we have the cation. On the right side, we have the anion. So All right, next we need to name the anion, and for monatomic anions, these are usually nonmetals, we add a suffix of IDE to the stem of the name of the nonmetal. So just a few of these. If it's O2-, and if you look at your periodic table, oxygen's in group 16, so you should be predicting that oxygen would be would form a 2- ion. We get rid of that. Oxide, right? Instead of oxygen, we call it oxide. This one you've heard of, F- is not fluorine, it is fluoride. Please write that down and please spell it correctly. It is FLUORIDE. And nitrogen becomes nitride. So, polyatomic ions, you just have a name. Monatomic ions, you do this for metals and that for nonmetals.